Hello, everyone. Welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. I'm doing another Doctor Who review, this time on the latest episode titled 73 Yards. This one seems to have gotten some mixed reception all around. Me personally, I really enjoyed this one. It's my favorite out of the what's come out so far this current season, if you don't count the Christmas special, the church on Ruby Road. I don't think it tops that one for me. But yeah, I thought this was a really strong one. I really enjoyed the feel and the vibes of it. The main criticism I see across the Doctor Who online sphere is people not being happy with not having a lot of answers to some of the stuff that happens in this. And I personally am fine with not having answers because I feel like the mood and the feel of like going through this episode just it just feels like enough to me. So I'll go ahead and talk about it in spoilery detail, assuming that you, the viewer, have already watched the episode. If you haven't, pause this, go watch it, and then come back to this. So Ruby and the Doctor land near this. I guess they call it a fairy circle, and there's some Welsh lore that is dropped here and there, and this the Doctor also mentions something that happens in the year 2046 regarding this guy Roger Ap William. I don't remember if the G is pronounced like out loud or not, or if it's silent. But someone who he's described as someone who almost brought a nuclear disaster, as prime minister, I believe it was. So kind of echoing the threat that we saw in The Devil's Chord when, in a world without music, there would be nuclear fallout, people keeping on fighting each other. So it's interesting that that is brought back here. And I also feel like there's a common lesson that we are seeing in these episodes of this current season, which is basically watch your step. In Space Babies, Ruby steps on the butterfly. In the previous episode, Boom, the Doctor steps on a landmine. And here he steps on a fairy circle, or I think that's what they call it, a fairy circle. And that causes some trouble after Ruby reads the scrolls. It says "Rest in peace, Mad Jack," and then suddenly the Doctor is gone. But from far away, she sees a woman who is watching her, and as she gets closer, the woman gets further away. I feel like at first it's not conveyed in the best way. Like I knew that this was being, the intention of this was that okay, the as she gets closer, the woman gets further away. But I feel like Ruby doesn't walk far enough within the shot to like convey in the best way that like once it cuts back to the woman, that the woman is further away, and when it does cut back to the woman, it's hard to tell that she's further away. I guess you could kind of tell by the background changing a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were kind of limited in like how they could film this. I don't know, but the intention is pretty clear enough, I suppose. 73 yards. Uh, we were able to figure out pretty quickly that 73 yards is the distance between Ruby and this woman, no matter what. And she talks to Ruby, that is, talks to this hiker played by Susan Twist, who has played multiple characters throughout the last several episodes. And Ruby even mentions that she looks familiar. And I wondered if this was Ruby remembering the other characters played by the same actress. Russell, I think I saw a quote from Russell T that seemed to be trying to squash that idea and just saying, oh, it's just someone that we had available for these multiple roles. And I don't 100% buy that quite yet. But Yeah, so it could be Ruby remembering those other roles, or it could be something else, which I'll talk about later at the end. So the hiker talks to the woman for Ruby, and then we see from far away the woman like talks to she says something to the hiker, and the hiker looks back at Ruby and runs away, and like we don't know what the woman says, and I quite like that we never really know what she says. I think there's something more unsettling about not knowing. It kind of, it feels kind of real, like it kind of brings to mind the fear that someone might be gossiping about you or talking behind your back, and like you don't know like what you did wrong. This and so yeah, I quite like those vibes here. Ruby goes to this inn, I suppose it is, and the people there, they she explains what's going on, and she's still looking for the doctor. The TARDIS is locked, and once she explains the fairy circle and the scrolls, everyone acts all scared and uh, mentions like this lore about Mad Jack. And the up close camera angles are so exquisitely done. Like it feels so super serious, but also a little over the top, which feels appropriate because it turns out that they are playing a prank on her. So they really got us there. I quite liked that, but I think there might be some truth to what they were trying to say. This woman is, I think, described as a herald of sorts. So Ruby goes home after a bit, and her mother Carla comes up with this plan. Like she'll talk to the woman who is still following Ruby, but still keeping her distance, 73 yards away. Someone at the inn mentioned the term. Was it semper distance? And at that point, I kind of wondered whether social distancing might have inspired the idea for this. Like, not that the episode is, I don't think the episode is saying something about social distancing, but I could imagine like maybe going through that experience and coming up with an idea for a story that involves a character being a certain amount of distance from another character. So Carla has this plan that she'll talk to the woman while on the cell phone with Ruby, and she does so, and the woman says something to her, and Carla, Ruby's mom, runs away, and we see her in a car, driving by Ruby, and it looks like she doesn't want to see her again, which is very scary because this is someone that raised Ruby, and now she wants nothing to do with her, and it's like, what the heck happened? And I feel like not knowing like just really does a great job of fueling that fear. We also see Mrs. Flood very briefly here. We don't know much about her um, at this point, but I'm glad that they still showed her, a reminder that she is a character in the show. So maybe there will be more on her later. And we see Ruby um, going some time is passing. At some point she says it's been a year, and after that there's more time that passes, but I think after just a year is when Kate Lethbridge Stewart from Unit meets up with her, and I was not expecting to see her in this episode, so it felt kind of grounding to see a familiar face like her, after Ruby's mom has gone. And obviously, Ruby and Kate have not met each other prior to this. So it's cool to have that little crossover. And for a moment, Ruby feels safe because Kate knows the doctor and has dealt with all these things. As she mentions, all these safeguards that unit has, what they're equipped to deal with. But even so, the unit reinforcements, they try to bring in the woman, and Kate tells them to not engage with her, but they still manage to hear from the woman. And since Kate is like on the thing, the was a walkie or a phone or something that was able to let her overhear, so she hears a woman, and then she's like disengage, and like just she and Unit just get the heck away from Ruby, and it's like so it's like for a moment, imagine you're in Ruby's place. You feel so safe. You feel for the first time in like a year, and you're comfortable. You have these people who seem like they're gonna help you, and then all of a sudden, these people who believe you, who believe in the supernatural or paranormal, scientifically extraordinary things, and now they're not gonna help you. Like that's, I just think that's really effective personally. So some more time passes. Ruby kind of tries to date, but it's obvious that she's millions of miles away as a woman keeps on watching her from 73 yards away, and her dates even say as much. And on the screen, as she sees the man that the doctor had mentioned before, Roger Ap William, and so Ruby surmises that she is meant to try and stop him. And so some more time passes. They kind of do a little bit of effort to make it seem like Ruby has grown older, giving her outfits that make her look like she's not as young anymore. I think she grows her hair out long, or I guess I gave Millie a wig, perhaps, give her glasses. I saw some people say that they could have done more, but I mean, I don't know. There are people in real life who have good skincare routines, so like, I don't know. But anyway, I guess it's 2046 when this happens, according to what the doctor had mentioned earlier. But when the prime minister is about to do the thing that will ruin everything, Ruby is like in the middle of this stadium, and she tries to be exactly or almost exactly 73 yards away from him, and people are trying to stop her or telling her to stand down or whatever, and but she's able to accomplish it. So the woman ends up right next to William, and she tells, the woman tells him something, and that makes him run away, and so nobody has to worry about his decision making anymore. So at a certain point, I kind of expected that, like, that would be the solution. Although I probably didn't think about it until the stadium scene began. But then we get a 40 years later time jump. Ruby is older, and even before this time jump, it was sometime in the middle of when it seemed like time was passing. I kind of figured that the woman would end up being revealed to be Ruby herself. And that's pretty much what happens. Ruby is, this is 60 odd years after the woman started following her. And uh, Ruby is confronted by the woman. And then we see that she basically becomes her. We see her point of view and how she's at that point where the Doctor and young Ruby had originally landed the TARDIS by the fairy circle, and old Ruby yells out something to the effect of "Don't step on, don't step" or whatever. And so she prevents the Doctor from stepping on the circle, and the Doctor prevents Ruby from reading the scrolls. And you get the sense that Ruby has a feeling that she's been here before. The woman disappears, her future self, who's experienced a lifetime. So I guess in a way, Ruby kind of has those experiences on a subconscious level, being in this setting before. And that's the end of that episode. Now, earlier, I mentioned that the Susan Twist character seemed familiar to Ruby. And at first, I thought maybe she's remembering the other characters played by Susan. But now I'm wondering if maybe this, at the beginning of this episode, maybe it's just Ruby having that future memory of her future self or future version of herself talking to this hiker right before the hiker is about to talk to the woman. That's a weird way to say all of that, but if you've seen the episode, you know what I mean. Um, so I do kind of wonder if maybe that's more of a reference to that than to, the same person playing multiple characters. I also tried sort of going through the scenario in my head, trying to figure out how Ruby becomes the woman, um, when not succeeding and right before she actually succeeds. If that makes this is really weird to verbalize out loud, but so Ruby causes the doctor to disappear. And so I tried imagining what the timeline would be like. So I wasn't sure if the woman automatically appears or if Ruby experiences a timeline without the woman first and then becomes that woman. So in that particular scenario, this one that I'm speculating about, Ruby goes through this timeline without the doctor. The woman is not present yet, and then things happen, and perhaps Ruby does not stop the William from preventing the nuclear disastrous stuff. But then once that happens, how does Ruby become the woman and go back to that point in time? It's a bit of a mystery. And the woman would, at this point, after that particular scenario, already know that stepping in the circle was a mistake. So she would try to warn Ruby, but she doesn't warn her here, which leads me to believe that the woman, um, it's probably more likely that the woman does not appear until after Ruby has accidentally made the doctor disappear. So she's unable to stop them from stepping on the thing and reading the thing. And so the woman is maybe Ruby's future self is uh, cursed to, or maybe the woman is an entity that just appears, and maybe it's not Ruby at first until the very end of the scenario plays out, and it lets Ruby become her, and then she goes back to just before the stepping on the circle, and she's able to prevent it. I don't know. That was very confusing the way that I explained that. I don't know, and yeah, I don't know. I was just try to figure out the whole thing in my head, but bottom line is we don't know exactly, all of the logistics of the woman appearing and Ruby becoming the woman and Ruby going back in time from her far future back to this point, the logistics of why all that happens. And uh, yeah, so there are many unanswered questions. And I think the fact that the questions are not answered is rubbing some people the wrong way. Some people seem to think that maybe they'll touch on some of this later in the series, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is all just a one off thing. And if it is just a one off, some people are like, well, what was the point of all that? And I really think it's the vibes, the feeling of being scared and unsettled by these moments that Ruby's experiencing. Like, imagine being in her position and going through these unsettling moments. So yeah, I was just sold on the vibe and the feel of the episode. So I don't necessarily think that we absolutely need answers to everything. Like, I think it's a bit more interesting if we don't know everything, if we don't know what the woman says that makes people run away. I saw some speculation that maybe Kate's discussion about the TARDIS perception filter and talking about the woman, maybe she has some sort of perception filter that makes people see Ruby some way. Everyone's canceling Ruby, so maybe if there's something like that at play, but I would not mind if they just never explain it. I mean, I don't know. Have weeping angels been explicitly explained in full in Doctor Who? Um, People really love them even without the explanations. So, yeah, I think this episode lands well enough for me, even if it does leave some questions unanswered. So overall, I think I'd give this episode an 8.5 out of 10. So yeah, I really think it's that good. And maybe it's because I've watched some David Lynch works, and they work. Some of them work fine without knowing the answers to everything, and so I'm kind of fine with that sort of thing happening in something like Doctor Who. Obviously, it's going to vary from story to story. Maybe sometimes I'll feel like, well, there really needed to be an answer to this thing here, but in this particular instance, I'm quite satisfied enough with how it played out. So yeah, that's this episode, and I'm very curious to see what'll happen the rest of the season. I'm really glad that I got an episode that I enjoyed this much, because the last few, like I said, Space Babies, and then the next couple I thought were enjoyable but kind of just fine. So yeah, this show I'm really invested and looking forward to seeing what more comes about in the path of Ruby and the 15th Doctor. And I also like the 15th Doctor's different outfits. I don't think he needs to stick to just one signature outfit. It's not just the outfit that makes the hero, it's the heroics performed by the hero. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on this. And yeah, I'm just going to catch up on Star Trek Discovery now. May the Force be with you.